is no doubt that the temporary marriage is permissible in the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one has the right to change that. No one has the right to say it's haram. No one has the right to say this has no place in Sharia. So we're very clear on that. However, there are two important principles that Islam teaches us that we have to keep in mind whenever we practice anything in society, in our family life, in our social life, in our individual life. There are two very important principles that we must keep in mind. The first principle is قاعدة لا ضرر ولا ضرار. The Prophet ﷺ stated, لا ضرر ولا ضرار في الإسلام. This is called the law of no harm in Islam. If a husband who's married, who has a family, if he's aware that if he engages in temporary marriage, this will mean that his family will be destroyed. His wife will separate from him. As a result, the children will be at loss. They will grow up in a broken family relationship, and that harms them religiously, psychologically, and even socially. This will impose harm on them. What does the law of no harm here state? We also have another verse, and we also have a verse in the Holy Quran. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum. O you who believe, protect yourselves and your families. So we have the law of no harm, and we also have the law of family protection, which the Holy Quran mandates on the believers. So you as a husband, you're required to protect your family, to protect them from harm. If you know that engaging in this type of relationship will eventually lead to the destruction of your family, then what is your religious moral obligation here? See, in the past, the reason why it was more acceptable is because basically, even though the wife would not be okay with it, but in the end, what options did she have? She was financially dependent on the husband. It was not appropriate for her to separate or to seek a divorce. It would put her in a more miserable situation if she did. Today, in our society, there's options. If a woman doesn't like a relationship, bye, I'm out of this. I can get a job, I can support myself, I can find someone else later. So, in our society that we live in today, it's less likely for the wife to accept it, right? So in that case, the repercussions are great. So if a husband is aware that this will lead to the destruction of the family, to the breaking up of the family, the law of no harm prohibits him from doing that. The law of the family protection, قُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَهْلِيكُمْ, also prohibits him from that. So this imposes a restriction. So those people who say, how is it our school of thought just gives a green light to everyone? No, remember there are principles. Everything, by the way, this doesn't have to do with marriage only. Everything, food that you eat. The law of no harm says you cannot eat food that's unhealthy on a constant basis because you will damage your health. This law has been used by maraji and scholars to even restrict smoking. Smoking every day, for instance, smoking excessively, right? What is it that would ban a person from smoking excessively? Do we have a hadith or verse in the Holy Quran that bans excessive smoking? No, because it didn't exist at the time. So what could ban or restrict smoking? Law of no harm. If you're posing excessive damage to your health, then that becomes haram by the law of no harm. The law of no harm is applicable everywhere. If fasting causes harm on you, you don't fast. Remember, fasting is a very important obligation. But if it causes harm, you don't fast. It becomes haram to fast. Same with this idea here. If this will lead to harm in the family, the law of no harm makes it haram, makes it prohibited. So that in itself is a rational moral restriction on temporary marriage. Now, yes, I'll have to admit one thing, and I know this is sensitive, and probably the sisters will find this unacceptable. We stated what the moral obligation is for the man. We mentioned la darar, the law of no harm. We mentioned the law of family protection, قُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَهْلِيكُمْ. We've mentioned that, right? So it's very clear that the husband must exercise proper judgment and know not to harm the family. No doubt about that. However, if he did, does the wife have the right to expose him, attack him, and destroy the family and cause harm to the family? Does she have that right?
No.
She does not.
Unless she put the condition that he doesn't marry.
Yes, if she put the condition in the Katb Kitab that you are not allowed to marry unless with my permission, sure. That is something clear from day one, and it's binding on him. No doubt about that.
But I still don't think that means he should expose him and do this whole thing. I think it's better if they just split up quietly versus...
Well, normally that doesn't happen. Normally it starts with a huge fight, then they become defensive, then she tries to justify her position. Because remember, a wife separating from the husband is not perceived positively in the community. So she needs to justify it. They're like, well, why are you separating? What did you do? What happened? So she wants to justify, so she will expose him, she will attack him. Now, in God's law, she has no right. Allah will hold her responsible. As much as he's responsible for causing damage to the family, she's also responsible. In the end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will tell her, you had no right to cause the breakup of the family. You ruined the religious, social, and psychological state of your children as a result of the commotion that you created. So we have to also be clear that this is not a right that she has. So yes, number one, he needs to be responsible and know the law of no harm, the law of family protection. Number two, she also needs to be responsible. In the end, if that does happen, either there's a quiet way to solve things or patience. Remember, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying us in this life. Yes, it's difficult. It's not easy. It's a difficult trial. But in the end, if she's patient, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will compensate her and reward her. But she doesn't, because today, it's kind of understood in society that no, khalas, she has the right. You know, this is, he cheated, he betrayed her, he backstabbed her, so she can do whatever she wants. No, not in God's law. Not in God's law. This is not allowed. If he did something wrong that he should not have done, he should have, been more considerate to the well-being of the family, that does not justify her taking the next step to ruin the family situation.
Hold on. So I'm confused. So if a husband cheats on his wife, she doesn't have the right...
First of all, the word cheat, we have to modify it. If what he did was halal according to Sharia, we cannot use the word cheat. We can use other words. He did something inappropriate. He did something irresponsible. Yes. We can use words like that. Because remember, we talked about the law of no harm. We talked about the law of protecting one's family and not doing something that will destroy the positive family relationship. We agree. So I would just want to modify the word cheat. Because cheat indicates illegal or haram. And we've established in our two classes that originally in Sharia, it is halal. Yes, it has conditions. One also has to be responsible about it, right? I'll just ask you this question. I'm not comparing in any way, but I'm just asking this question. Eating a delicious hamburger every single day, or actually let me ask you this question. Eating a fatty hamburger, is it halal or haram? Right now somebody presents it to you. Are you allowed to eat it? Yeah, it's halal hamburger. What if you're having it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Now is this halal?
No, because now...
Because see, now you have your health that you need to be concerned about. See, being responsible and moderate applies to everything. So we cannot say originally in Sharia it's haram. No, we've examined the evidence before that it is halal. So let's say a husband did. For whatever reason, he did. Okay, we can make the case that it was irresponsible maybe. He should not have, he should have put his family first. We agree on that. Remember, we talked about the law of no harm and the law of family protection. But now that he did, so continue with the object. Now that he did, does she have the right to do something that will destroy the family?
Such as asking for a divorce?
See, if there's a quiet way to settle it without having a psychological impact on the children, okay, she can ask for that. And they could find a quiet way to do that. But if she knows, if I go and I seek divorce and we have kids in this marriage, things will change. They won't be the same. I, as a single mother, with today's society, I have no way of really trying to protect them, especially when they become teenagers. Sometimes you need that father figure at home, right? Yeah, sometimes your husband is abusive, irresponsible, that's a different story. But we're assuming this person is otherwise a responsible father at home, okay? So if she knows if I go and seek divorce, my children will suffer. The dangers that we have in society with drug addiction, with all sorts of other problems, they will become more of a reality. And I, as a single mother, I just can't. It's too much for me to deal with all of that. So if she knows or she's confident that by seeking a divorce, she will destroy the family and the kids will suffer, does she have that right? That's the question.
It's inappropriate of her to.
So just as what he did was inappropriate, what she's going to do by destroying the family is also inappropriate. So you could say, okay, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expect from her? Be patient. Life is a test. Allah will try you through your health, through your family, through your finances. These are means of trial. If he's not an abusive husband, right? See, there are husbands who take that path and they become abusive. That's a different situation. We're not talking about that. He's otherwise a good husband. He has good akhlaq. He's financially responsible. He's a good father to the kids. He slipped in one area. Does that justify her doing something that's going to destroy the family? That's the question here. Yes.
How come some marja, they say he has to seek permission from his wife, and some might say he doesn't have to seek permission?
No marja says he has to seek permission from his wife. No, not even Sayyid Sistani. No, that's not his ruling. Unless she stipulated. When they did the katb kitab,
They don't have to? You tell me
No.
as a husband if I can it's not a
look, we're talking about the
I'm not trying to-
we're talking about the letter of the law or what's good and what's not good.
ruling in his,
If you talk about the letter of the law, meaning the law, the technical law, no, he doesn't need the permission of his wife.
and he doesn't need to tell her?
It's for a second permanent marriage, I think there is that ruling, not for a temporary.
No, not even for the second permanent marriage. Not a single marja or scholar states that. Yes, the condition, some scholars have stated, if you have a Muslim wife and you want to marry a non-Muslim wife, a Christian woman, whether temporary or permanent, then a number of scholars have said he needs the permission of his Muslim wife. That we're not talking about that. But if the second one is Muslim, no.
I remember reading on his website.
Are you aware of any marji' who says if you want to marry a second wife, whether permanent or marriage, you need the permission of the first wife?
He's right, but it's non-Muslim because the question was asked if I need to go with Mut'ah with Ajnabi.
Okay. So if it's non-Muslim, then yes.
I was reading it, he said he has to seek permission from his wife.
Yeah, in that scenario, he has to seek the permission. In that scenario, if she's non-Muslim. If she's non-Muslim, then yes, he would need the permission of his Muslim wife. But if the second one is Muslim, no. No marja' says that he needs the permission. Remember, we're talking about the law itself, the technical legal law, right? Now, what's moral, what's good or not, this is the discussion that we're having.
I'm actually just talking, I thought there was differences because
Now, there's a hadith from Imam Reza alayhi salam that's interesting, I'd like to share with you, in which the Imam is telling some of his companions a very important point over here. So this hadith is in the book of Kafi. It's from Sahl, from Muhammad ibn al-Hasan ibn Shammun. قال كتب أبو الحسن عليه السلام إلى بعض مواليه. Al-Imam Abu al-Hasan usually is Al-Imam al-Kadhim or Al-Imam al-Reza alayhi salam. That's their title. He wrote to some of his companions. He says, لا تلحوا على المتعة إنما عليكم إقامة السنة. Don't be persistent in pursuing mut'ah marriages. But your obligation is to accept the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and make sure that the sunnah survives. Establish the sunnah. فَلَا تَشْتَغِلُوا بِهَا عَنْ فَرْشِكُمْ وَحَرَائِرِكُمْ. Don't go and preoccupy yourselves with the Mut'ah marriage at the expense of your permanent wives. فَيَكْفُرْنَ. See, he says, look at the consequence. فَيَكْفُرْنَ. Number one, they will disbelieve in this religion that allows this temporary marriage. وَيَتَبَرَّيْنَ. They will condemn this religion. وَيَدْعِينَ عَلَى الْآمِرِ بِالذَّلِكِ. They will do a dua against those who allowed it, meaning the legislators, meaning the Sharia. وَيَلْعَنُونَنَا. And they will curse us, the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, for allowing the Mut'ah marriage. So the Imam says to his companions, don't put yourself in that situation where it's having negative family consequences. Now then, what does the Imam mean by saying, إِنَّمَا عَلَيْكُمْ إِقَامَةُ السُّنَّةِ? See, the way we can reconcile between this hadith and other hadiths is the following. We do have hadiths that do encourage mut'ah. I wouldn't deny that. This is in our books, in our hadiths. But how do we analyze them? See, when Umar ibn al-Khattab banned the mut'ah marriage, he banned something in the Quran and something that was in the Sunnah of the Prophet. So the Imams of Ahlul Bayt took a stance. You don't have the right to legislate in God's religion. So you, as a follower of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, number one, in your heart, reject what Umar did. Reject it. Say, I condemn it. I don't accept it. At least in your heart, accept the Sunnah of the Prophet, that this is part of Sharia. So because the Imams lived in an era that completely banned it and considered it adultery, the Imams of Ahlul Bayt would encourage their companions in what sense? That don't let the Sunnah of the Prophet completely disappear in history. Because the temporary marriage is necessary for certain scenarios. Whereas Umar ibn al-Khattab, he just put a blanket general ban on it. And by doing so, he omitted one of the tenets of the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you companions make sure that this survives in history, that it still stays part of Sharia. This is what the Imam means by iqamatu sunnah. But remember, don't cause a problem in your family and persist on it and insist on it. It's a temporary solution for a temporary problem. But don't make it the norm in your life where your wives are going to disbelieve in this religion, curse us, the Ahlul Bayt, for allowing it. So don't put yourself in that situation. So this is a hadith in the book of Kafi. Now, the sanad of the hadith, yes, some scholars will dispute the sanad. Sahel ibn Ziyad is seen as reliable by some scholars, and some see him as unreliable. And also Muhammad ibn al-Hasan ibn Shamoon, some see him as anonymous. But we do have this hadith in the book of Kafi. And basically, the Imam is upholding the idea of no harm. Don't cause harm to your family and push them to these consequences. Any thoughts on this particular hadith? The other point here, my dear brothers and sisters, we mentioned in the beginning that this is a temporary solution for those youth who probably don't have access to permanent marriage, and falling into the path of haram is imminent for them, right? We mentioned that this could be a temporary solution for them. But there is one recommendation that scholars give here. There are some youth, yes, they do have legitimate concerns. I cannot get married on a permanent basis, so I have this temporary solution. But instead of using it moderately, this solution, right, and being responsible only when necessary, it becomes a lifestyle for them. Khalas, just because it's halal, then I have to do it as much as I can. Scholars don't accept this. They discourage this for a number of reasons. I'll share with you two reasons. Number one, if a person develops the habit of having this type of lifestyle, when they get married tomorrow in the future, and now they have a commitment with this permanent wife, naturally what's going to happen? They go back to that lifestyle. See, if you get used to a certain lifestyle, it's difficult to change it. And because before marriage, the permanent marriage, they develop the habit of excessively engaging in temporary marriage, this habit might continue with them for life. And this will have serious consequences in today's society. So this is something that people also need to understand. It's a temporary solution for a temporary problem. Only one should resort to it when there's a pressing need. Only. But for it to be a lifestyle, scholars generally discourage from that. And this brings us to the next point. So that's the first reason. The second reason, the Imams of Ahlul Bayt also made it very clear to their companions. Yes, it's halal in God's Sharia. However, if you're in a particular society or community that is going to attack you for it, consider it immoral, accuse you of even adultery like in Sunni societies, right? And this is going to give the Imams of Ahlul Bayt or the Shia school of thought a negative image, the Imams would tell them, stay away from that. I'll share with you that hadith. Al-Shaykh al-Kulayni narrates this hadith from Ammar. قال أبو عبد الله عليه السلام لي ولسليمان ibn Khalid. He says, Al-Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam said to me, Ammar, and Sulaiman ibn Khalid, the two of us, قد حرمت عليكم المتعة من قبلي ما دمتما بالمدينة. He says, I've made mut'ah temporarily haram on you two, you Ammar and you Sulaiman ibn Khalid. I declare it haram for you as long as you are in Medina. Imam al-Sadiq lived in Medina. They would visit Medina, right? The Imam alayhi salam tells them, while you're visiting in Medina, as long as you're here in Medina, I make it haram on you. Why? The Imam says, لِأَنَّكُمَا تُكْثِرَانِ الدُّخُولَ عَلَيْهِ. You two are my close companions. You frequently come to visit me. فَأَخَافُ أَن تُؤْخَذَ فَيُقَالْ هَؤُلَاء أَصْحَابُ جَعْفَرَ. I am concerned, scared, that the authorities who declare mut'ah, of course, haram, and for them it's adultery, I'm afraid they will capture you, arrest you. And knowing that you are doing mut'ah in Medina, they will say, oh, these are the companions of Ja'far ibn Muhammad. They engage in immoral acts. This is not the proper image for you to give to the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. So you see how the Imam alayhi salam made it clear to their companions, yes, it was halal in God's Sharia, no doubt about that, but you also have to be responsible. If you're in a community that completely does not accept it, then stay away from it. Because then you'll get the Imams in trouble. You will give a negative image of the Shia school of thought. So in this hadith, the Imam alayhi salam, he declares it haram for these two companions because of this particular situation. So that is something very important to also consider. Any questions on that? We also have Sahl ibn Ziyad in this hadith. So those scholars who consider Sahl to be not reliable, they could dispute the authenticity of the chain. Whereas other scholars who believe Sahl ibn Ziyad is reliable, and one of the clues that he is reliable, Al-Kulayni narrates more than 1,000 hadiths, and Sahl ibn Ziyad is in the chain. Which means Kulayni believed he was reliable, and that's one evidence for his reliability. Yes?
Okay, so if someone believes that doing temporary marriage would hurt their chances of getting permanently married, would that also make it haram?
Okay, so if a person kind of knows or is confident that if I engage in temporary marriage now, this will hurt my chances of getting permanently married in the future and having a stable family life. What does the law of no harm here state? Don't put yourself in that situation. Unless the other outcome is imminent haram. Then in that case, Islam says never put yourself in a situation where you're sinful. Protect yourself from sin when necessary. Have tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open a path for you. وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. If you're truly pious, you're not doing it just to succumb to your desires. No, you really care about your religion. You don't want to do something haram. You tried, but you just reached a point where you knew that you will fall into haram. In that case, even if you have the concern that it could hurt your chances of getting married in the future, but protecting yourself from haram now is guaranteed Allah will open a path for you in the future. Because you are having tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. See, even approaching the idea of temporary marriage like that, even approaching it with this level of taqwa and spirituality, that in itself keeps it away from being a relationship that's immoral. See, people who have these illegitimate relationships, there is no spirituality in those relationships. And they know they're doing something wrong. But if a person is responsible, they know how to exercise proper judgment, but they reach the point where that was really the only way to save their religion, to protect them from haram. And they have the tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, their niyyah is based on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will open a path for them. This is not something that will negate their spirituality. Because I've heard this from some people, temporary marriage means there's no spirituality in your life. No, not necessarily. So if it's hurting the chances of getting permanently married, then yes, one should be responsible. Make sure that you put yourself in a situation where you will get married. But if it was just not possible to protect yourself from haram, then yes. If that's the only way, in fact, scholars and maraja say, if that's the only way to protect you from haram, it becomes wajib. Not only is it allowed, no, it becomes wajib.
Two follow-up questions.
Yes.
Okay. The first one is so the reason I feel like it would hurt someone from getting married is a lot of girls nowadays will not marry someone who maybe wasn't a temporary marriage or if that's their image.
Right.
So would it be haram for a girl to reject someone based on that? No.
If that person who comes forward, the young man, if he has the two criteria the Prophet mentions, religion and akhlaq. Religion means he fears God. He's committed to his religion. Akhlaq means he has a proper attitude, outlook, behavior, you name it, good personal qualities. He's not selfish, he's not arrogant, he's not angry. He has good, decent akhlaq. If he has these two, now let's talk a little bit about this past that he had. If he has a type of past where it became his lifestyle, right? He excessively engaged in it, and she just knows between her and Allah she cannot accept that for herself. Because in the future she has concerns, he's going to go back to that lifestyle, and she just cannot handle it. Yeah, she is justified in rejecting him. But if it's something that he may have done for a necessary situation once or twice, for instance, but it was not a lifestyle that he developed, then it's probably inappropriate for her to reject him. It's not haram. Remember, you're not obligated to accept. In the end, Islam says you agree whenever you want to agree. But Islam does encourage that if those two qualities are there, then accept the person. It's probably inappropriate to reject a person like that. So it really depends on the extent to which this person engaged in temporary marriage. Was it a one-time thing, a temporary, solution that the person needed, or no, it became a habit? If it became a habit, then yeah, she's justified in rejecting him. If it was not a habit, it was just a one-time or a temporary solution, then yes, Islam would discourage rejecting him for this sole reason. The second hadith we'll mention, and scholars have mentioned this in their book of rulings, the Imam alayhi salam was asked, Al-Imam Abu al-Hasan alayhi salam was asked, فِي الْمَرْأَةِ الْحَسْنَاءِ الْفَاجِرَةِ. Someone asked him about a beautiful woman, but she's a prostitute. She commits adultery. Is it possible for a man to engage in temporary marriage with her, يوما أو أكثر, for a day or more? The Imam alayhi salam states, إِذَا كَانَتْ مَشْهُورَةً بِالزِّنَا فَلَا يُتَمَتَّعْ بِهَا وَلَا يَنْكِحَهَا. The Imam says if she's known for that immoral lifestyle, she's a prostitute, a well-known prostitute, then no. Permanent or temporary marriage, you as a believer, you cannot marry her. So the Imam alayhi salam is also putting further conditions here. And remember, we talked about in our first class, those who say temporary marriage is just like prostitution. We talked about that, and we mentioned what differentiates it. And the main point, if you remember, was the waiting period, right? A woman who engages in temporary marriage, there's a waiting period that she has to observe, which is 2 months, 2 cycles. With a permanent marriage, it's 3 cycles. With a temporary marriage, it's 2 cycles. And that in itself protects from prostitution. Finally, we'll conclude with this hadith, which takes us back to our previous discussions, and it shows you that the Imams of Ahlul Bayt were attacked by others. So this hadith is from Ali ibn Ibrahim, an Abi, an Ibn Abi Umayr, an Umar ibn Udayna, an Zurara. It's a reliable hadith. Zurara says, قال جاء عبد الله ibn عمرو الليثي إلى أبي جعفر. Abdullah ibn Amr al-Laythi was a Sunni, meaning not a follower of the Ahlul Bayt. He comes to the Imam alayhi salam. He asked al-Imam al-Baqir. Al-Imam Abu Ja'far is al-Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam. He told him, ما تقول في متعة النساء? What do you say about the mut'ah of women, meaning the temporary marriage? Because we have the mut'ah of the Hajj. We talked about it in our last class. What is the mut'ah of the Umrah and the Hajj? So he asked him about the mut'ah of women. قال أحلها في كتابه. Allah has made it halal in His book. وعلى لسان نبيه. And the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم made it halal. فهي حلال إلى يوم القيامة. It's permissible till the day of judgment. So that man said, يا أبا جعفر مثلك يقول هذا وقد حرمها عمر ونهى عنها. How can you dare say that it's halal when Umar banned it? How do you dare? The Imam alayhi salam says, وَإِن كَانَ فَعَلْ. So what if Umar banned it? I'm telling you, Allah made it lawful in the Quran and the Prophet made it lawful in his Sunnah. So what if Umar banned it? The man says, فَإِنِّي أُعِيذُكَ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ ذَلِكَ أَن تُحِلَّ شَيْئًا حَرَّمَهُ عُمَرُ. I warn you, don't legalize something that Umar made haram. The Imam alayhi salam says, fine, you follow your leader Umar, and I follow Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Your leader says it's haram, fine, accept that for yourself. And my leader Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said it's halal. And remember, we mentioned the Sunni sources that the Prophet said it's halal. And I'll follow the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Then the man resorted to the same strategy that today those who are critical of Shia do. I've seen scholars having arguments with Sunni scholars, like an academic argument, just from sources. When they don't know how to respond, what do they say? Do you accept this for your sister, for your daughter? Do you? Tell us, do you? I remember it was a live broadcast when that Sunni Wahhabi guy, he told the Shia scholar, do you accept it for your daughter? Say it now on the TV. The man said the same thing to Imam al-Baqir. فقال له عبد الله ابن عمر ابن عمرو يسرك أن نساءك وبناتك وأخواتك وبنات عمك يفعل. Are you happy that your women, your daughters, your sisters, your nieces would do this? فأعرض عنه أبو جعفر. The Imam turned his face and he didn't continue the discussion, because then it became insults, right? The person was not being respectful or academic in his discussion. And we addressed this misconception before. Does anyone remember the example we gave? We'll conclude with this example just to refresh your memory. See, not everything that's halal in Sharia, it means a person has to accept it for himself. I'll give you an example. Right now, we have some parents here, or imagine yourself a parent. If you have a daughter, she's 20, and a man who's 35 years old, who works as a janitor, he comes and he proposes to your daughter. Would you accept that for your daughter? Just be honest. Don't talk me ideals and what Islam abolished. Tell me about yourself. Would you accept that for your daughter? Okay, so we have a person here who accepts it. What about the others? Would you accept it?
I won't.
Who else would accept it?
If it's a God fear, why not? They can't.
Remember, ma'am ahki ideals. Don't tell me ideals. I'm telling you, if tomorrow a janitor comes proposing for your daughter, be realistic, please. And living in the community, would most people in the community accept it? Does that mean it's haram? No. What does that have to do with halal and haram? There are a lot of things people don't accept for themselves, but doesn't mean that it's haram. Bil'aks, Islam says if he has good akhlaq, if he's God-fearing, accept it. But what people say, no, I'm not going to accept him. I'll give you another example. If today in this society, a man comes from another race, I'm not going to mention specific races, but you know what I mean. A person comes from another race and he proposes to your daughter, and you know he's a Muslim, he's a mu'min, he's good, he's decent, he has good akhlaq. Most people in the community, even religious people, you'll find them all the time in the masjid. You think they're going to accept? No. I tell you, out of experience in the community, experience with the community, I can safely tell you 98% won't accept. I'm being very honest with you. Okay, does that mean it's haram? Bil'aks, the Prophet ﷺ abolished such barriers. And in the biography of the Prophet, we do talk about the examples that the Prophet set in breaking these barriers. So this type of argument, do you accept this for your daughter, sister, mother? This is not an academic argument. We're talking about Sharia, the law, and the circumstances. What does it have to do with someone accepting something for himself or others? This is, not an appropriate way of arguing. And this man, he did the same with Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam. So the Imam just turned his face. He's like, there's no point in arguing with you.
So he never replied back?
No, the Imam just ended the discussion because there's no point. When the man makes an insult like that, what do you tell him? Anything you say, he's going to make further attacks. So with that, my dear brothers and sisters, we end the discussion on temporary marriage. Inshallah, in our subsequent classes, we'll transition into resurrection, ma'ad. We'll talk about the soul. We'll talk about death, the barzakh, and the day of judgment. And that in itself has a lot of interesting details, inshallah, that we look forward to learning from the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين.